Hello there, and welcome back to Civics. Today we're going to be talking about one of America's protected freedoms, freedom of religion, and we're going to be explaining a little bit more about what exactly that means, especially in the American context. So let's get started. What exactly is freedom of religion? Well, religious freedom is a principle that supports the freedom for individuals and communities in both public or private to practice their religious beliefs. And that means that no matter what it is you religiously believe in America, you are allowed to practice that religion. There's no law that can stop you from doing that. Unless, of course, right, like it involves like killing people or something like that, right? Like that's not great. But like in other than those extreme circumstances, right, all religious beliefs are accepted. Religious freedom also means that people can choose to change their beliefs without punishment or forego religious belief and practice entirely. So before the United States, when we were an English colony, right, there was a mandatory, well, it wasn't mandatory, but there was a state church, and they could punish you for not following their religious beliefs. Can't do that in America. Freedom of religion is now considered a fundamental human right in most nations, and in some nations that have national faiths, freedom of religion is still possible. In these situations, people of other faiths are not punished or persecuted for having a different belief in the state religion. It's just known that's the one that is the state's one. So let's talk about religious freedom in America for a second, since that's kind of the topic of our talk here. Religious freedom is the reason that many of the original colonies are actually founded. For instance, the Puritans were kicked out of England for their different beliefs, and they ended up founding the Massachusetts colony in America. These colonists did not practice religious freedom themselves, however, often persecuting other beliefs that didn't fit into their own belief systems in their colonies. For instance, the colony of Rhode Island was founded specifically to escape persecution in the Massachusetts colony by these Puritans who had been kicked out because of their religious beliefs. After the Revolutionary War and the adoption of the Constitution, religious freedom was enshrined in the Bill of Rights as part of the First Amendment to the Constitution. So the First Amendment guarantees religious freedom in the United States, and it says specifically that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So that means that we cannot have a state religion in the United States, and we cannot prohibit the free exercise thereof religion. So we can't stop people from practicing their individual beliefs. That amendment stops the government right from interfering in individual beliefs and religious practice. So it's protecting citizens from the government. It's basically saying that the government can't mess with that private matter that is our individual faith or non-faith. Now, in the United States, there is a belief that religion and government must also remain separate from each other, kind of further defining this religious freedom. So in places funded by the government, like public schools, people cannot teach or display religious issues and teachings, and individual students could still wear symbols of their faith, but the institution can't show bias towards individual faiths. So basically what that means when you're saying that you have to separate church and state is that the government can't mandate religious teachings or a religious practice or a religious ritual, right? All those things can't be mandated by the government. However, we can't stop individuals from wearing faith symbols in public places like schools. Recently, programs like school vouchers have reignited a debate over whether public schools should be able to teach religious doctrine. And there's a lot of quotes from founding fathers that say that that is not okay. So this debate really has opened it up, because basically what a school voucher program says is, hey, I want to have my kid go to a private religious school, but I want to use taxpayer funds to do that because I am a parent and I have a choice. I'm going to send my kid to this school. I want my tax dollars to go towards that school instead of the public one that's free, that's been provided for by the government. And so in a voucher program, right, tax dollars could be spent on a religious school which doesn't really flow with this whole religion and government thing, right? Because then the government is paying for a church school. We also, just to kind of further define religious freedom, thanks to the Jehovah's Witness religious sect, religious freedom has been further defined and investigated in the Supreme Court over the 30 or so cases that they have brought forth. Thanks to them, people can use their religious faith to abstain from patriotic rituals like standing for the flag or saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and they can also remove themselves from military service. So people who are Jehovah's Witness don't have to sign up for the draft, and they don't have to join the military. They also expanded the federal protection on religious freedom to the states as well. In one of the cases, they made it so the states also have to protect individuals from state governments as well. So it is not just a federal regulation. The federal government and state governments cannot restrict your religious freedom. They also created something called the Lemon Test. This is a test that the Supreme Court has created to kind of help us understand what makes a law dealing with religion constitutional. So basically, the Lemon Test says that a law is constitutional if it has a secular purpose, it is neither advanced or inhibited religion, and it did not foster an excessive government entanglement with religion. So if a law does all three of these things, then it's constitutional, it's okay, it's fine. If it does not, if it fails any of these three parts, then it can be ruled unconstitutional by the courts. So this test has been used several times to ensure that we are still holding on to this religious freedom in American law. Another example is in the case Wisconsin versus Jonas Yoder, which established that religious freedom can also get you out of compulsory education. In this case, the Amish people who stop educating their children after the 8th grade basically says that they're allowed to do that. Since it's in their faith that they don't have to go to school after 8th grade, they do not have to continue to go. Basically, the state of Wisconsin was trying to sue the Amish, and in particular this man, Jonas Yoder, to force him to send his kids to school because we have compulsory education in the United States. And he said, well, I'm Amish, and so I don't have to, and that held up in court. So that is A-okay. In this case, right, the right to practice your faith openly, which means not sending your child to school after the 8th grade, is protected by the First Amendment. It supersedes a state law mandating education because it is a federally protected right. Also, in 2012, it was ruled that religious organizations are exempt from federal discrimination laws when it comes to hiring religious leaders. Basically, this allows religious organizations the right to hire using faith's values instead of secular values. So that basically means that there are no federal discrimination in hiring laws when it comes to being hired by a church. So if a church is trying to hire you and they ask, let's say, they are allowed to ask you if you're pregnant, how old you are, all those different things, because they are exempt from those laws. Also, the Supreme Court has also ruled on the rights of civil rights commissions to enforce civil rights laws. In the case Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission, the court ruled that such committees must employ religious neutrality in their rulings. So civil rights commissions in certain states cannot religiously discriminate in their rulings on whether or not civil rights are being violated. The court, in this case, did not comment broadly on civil rights laws and freedom of religion due to the religious neutrality in the case. So there has not been a Supreme Court ruling that goes deeper into this. They kind of dodged the question in this case. So there's still more time for that to be investigated, right? The interpretation of religious freedom law is still open. There's still things that we haven't quite figured out, at least legally yet. Now, of course, in any country, in any law, right, there's always going to be misinterpretations of that law. In this case, religious freedom is often misinterpreted by everyday citizens, and they often mean that they can then force their beliefs on others because right? They have religious freedom, so they are free to make other people follow what they believe in, which just is not legally true, right? Religious groups cannot force others to abide by their faith's rules and regulations, just like the government cannot. So, religious freedom protects individuals from religious persecution. So that means that individuals can also not persecute others based on their faith, right? That means that lawmakers and citizens who are asking for certain religious beliefs to become law are really kind of violating this religious freedom statute, right? You can't force prayer in public schools because that would be forcing someone to follow a faith, which is against the Constitution. You can't make abortion illegal because your religion says it's illegal or is bad, because then you're forcing others to abide by your faith's beliefs. That is not protected in the First Amendment. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Civics, and subscribe to learn more about government, history, science, all sorts of things we have on the channel. Keep coming back, keep learning, and if there's something you want to learn about in particular, drop a comment below the video, and I'll see what I can do to make sure you learn about it. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.